Welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla Gonzalez. This is Interviews from Quito, the program where we explore the biggest challenges facing this country and the region. In today's program, we'll look at the historic ruling in favor of the indigenous WAORANIs in the Ecuadorian Amazon that forbids all companies from entering their ancestral territories to extract their resources. But what does this mean for Ecuador, a country strongly dependent on natural resources, especially oil? And will other communities follow the same path? What could be the future for hundreds of communities that live deep in the jungle? To discuss this, we have a WAO leader and a member of the Amazon Frontlines. But first, let's take a look at this video.
A court in Puyo, the capital of Pastaza province in the Ecuadorian Amazon, recently won a historic ruling which protects 500,000 acres of WAORANI territory from being exploited for oil drilling. The ruling also recognizes that the required consultation process with the WAORANI was violated. However, the WAORANI people continue to demand that their territories be respected. Members of the communities along with social organizations gathered in Quito to demand respect for their rights. They are asking that the Minister of Energy, Carlos Perez, respect the Constitution and not to impose the priorities of his ministry on protected lands. Despite Ecuadorian justice ruling in favor of the communities, the Minister of Energy has already said that in Ecuador there will be mining, no matter what, and it will be done in a responsible manner, at the same time confirming that the government will appeal the ruling.
So thank you, Nemonte, and thank you, Mitch, for being with us. Can you please first tell us, how did the WAORANI achieve such a historic ruling against oil companies?
My name is
Nemonte Niquino. I'm the president of 16 WAORANI communities. This fight is just not for us a victory. It's our grandparents are protectors of the jungle. There have been centuries that they've defended the land. They have not let any company come in. People who are not from the jungle, they defended it with anything they had at their hands. That struggle is now in our hands. And as we've seen, our territory is not only Pastaza, it entails 3 provinces. And we've seen many times that in our territory there are operations of these companies. And we've had problems of our own, and there has been contamination and deforestation, and many communities that have become sick due to contamination. We worked very hard to make maps of our territory, because we see that in territory there's a lot of life, not only the trees, but within the forest, it's full of resources. It's a sacred place. It's very important for our lives, and this is a very important struggle. But in 2012, the government tried to invade our territory and confuse our people. And they just went into the territory and they briefly explained that if we let the petroleum companies in, they would give us houses and many material things. But this was very brief, and most of our people don't speak Spanish. Even for me, it's really hard to understand. And I've studied, and I've tried, and I know the life of the Western world. And this is something they must understand. It's not easy for us. This is why we're calling on the government to have a protection resource, to protect the right to live. And this is very important. This was not understood, that in 2012 it was a violation. And that's what we're demanding. That's why we came here, to ask the government to hear us, to let us live in the jungle and live without contamination. We don't want, like other nationalities, that happened, the Chevron case. It was a disaster. And they lost everything, the water, the land, even their culture. We've seen what happened with the northern communities. And we were moved, and that made us stronger to keep on working against these companies. We still don't have companies that operate there. So now is the time to struggle. Not only for the WAORANI people, but for the other indigenous companies and the world. Now that the climatic change is undergoing, we're destroying our country. We're taking care of the Amazon basin, and those are the lungs of the world. And the WAORANI community is fighting. That's why we've come all the way to Quito to say the truth, that it's enough of contaminating. We don't want the oil companies to come in and destroy our nature. And that's what we come to demand, the government to respect our lives and our future.
How does your organization work with the WAORANI struggle, the WAORANI demands of their rights, their ancestral rights?
Yeah, so thanks for having us on the show. I began working with the WAORANI after 2012, after the government attempted to sell their lands out from under them without their consent. And the WAORANI people of Pastaza realized that the government doesn't see their territory as life. It doesn't see their territory as a place for them to heal themselves, as a sacred place, as a place where they can get their food. The government sees their territory as a place to exploit resources and oil. And in 2014, with the WAORANI, we began working on a territorial mapping project. And what the WAORANI elders and the women said is, we want to show the world that our territory is our life, and that what the government sees in our land as just oil isn't true. It's a lie. Our territory contains thousands of creeks. It contains waterfalls that heal us spiritually. It contains all of our medicine, and our people have been defending this land for thousands of years. And so we began working with them, my organization Amazon Frontlines, to help them build a map of their land that could then show the world and demonstrate to the world that their territory gives them everything that they need, and it's not for sale. And through that process, up into 2018, when the government announced again that they were planning on selling the WAORANI people's lands to the oil industry, that's when Nemonte and many WAORANI women and the elders decided they were going to file a lawsuit against the government for violating their rights to free, prior, and informed consent and their rights to territory back in 2012.
And now there's a part of the territory that will be protected. Oil companies cannot enter. But the government has said that it will fight back. How confident are you that it won't happen?
I'm not sure, but I think that the government has to hear our demands to the right to live. If I come to one of the minister's houses and I keep on insisting and insisting, I will have to understand that I can't come in. And likewise, they have to understand this is our territory. We have our life there. And not only for the WAORANIs, but for other communities. Why is it that it's called that we've got a plurinational country? Why don't they respect our culture? It's written, it's just written on paper, but it doesn't really happen. It's not respected. And that's what we're demanding. We need them to hear us. Many times the governments, they just demand, but they can't demand and demand. The Huaoranis have the right to live there. Our territory is our house. We have come to live, to ask that we be left to live in our house in peace, with our nature, with our rivers, with our air. If the government doesn't hear us, our fight will continue. We're not afraid of coming back. We're not afraid of continuing with this struggle. We want the whole world to hear us. That not only that we live from this land, but we also protect it for the rest of the world. Imagine, other countries don't even have water. And is that what they want for us too? Or do they want us to buy water from other countries? This is what we're demanding. Our government has to listen to us. And now we're getting organized among the Huaorani community how to confront this threat that is reaching our home. We're not going to allow, and we're not afraid. We're totally willing we're going to other instances. We'll go to other countries to demand our right to live. We've brought a great message, and the government has to hear. They just have to leave us in peace and not kill the nature and violate our rights.
And maybe one of the most important struggles that, at least abroad, is known is the case against Chevron Texaco, other communities as well. Have you been working together with the other communities? What are they saying about this specific case?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think what Namonte was saying as well is that, over the course of the last decade, the Huaorani people of Pastaza have visited the oil fields of Ecuador's northern Amazon. They visited the Siona, the Secoya, the Cofan people. They've heard from the elders. They've understood that when the oil companies arrive into primary rainforests, into the ancestral territories of indigenous peoples, what happens is destruction. What happens is death, contamination of rivers, of the waterways, loss of game, loss of culture, loss of spiritual practices. And the Huaorani of Pastaza are still living in a 500,000-acre roadless primary rainforest that they want to protect, and it gives them everything that they need to be happy and healthy in the forest. And so the communities of the north, the Siona, the Secoya, and the Cofan, have been strong allies for the Huaorani of the Pastaza region, helping them understand how important it is to not let the oil companies get a foothold in their lands now. And when the Huaorani filed the lawsuit over the last several months, from starting in February through April, there were many moments when the Huaorani came out of the forest in canoes, walking on jungle plain, and the Cofan, Siona, and Secoya of the northern part of the Amazon traveled by bus to meet them in Puyo and march with them and show solidarity.
And that was exactly my next question from Namonte. How was that walk? How was that march all together as a community to come to the capital and demand your rights, your ancestral rights?
Sí, eso también estamos como mañana. Vamos a estar con
tomorrow,
todas las mujeres de la Amazonía del
we will be with all of the northern women from the Amazon. And from Pastaza, they're also going to come to demand this right to life. We feel that we need to make the government understand that our forest is reducing, and to keep the Pastaza area as a virgin area that is untouchable, and that is the future for our community and for the rest of the world. We don't want them to let them reduce our territory little by little and disappearing our culture and our language. We've got a unique language and a unique culture. And we've got ancestral knowledges.
Contact with the women of the community, what are they saying? You talk to them continuously about the whole process. I want to hear their words as well.
Las mujeres
Well, the women,
somos más importante que hemos dicho nosotros.
the most important thing we've said is that we give women, we give life to our children. And the land is like our mother. It nurtures us. We're able to obtain food from it. We sow, and we raise our children there. That's why we believe the land is very important, and we as women, as mothers, are important too. So we want our children to be able to grow happy and healthy. They have everything available to them, all the food available to them. That's what we're going to fight. We're not going to let them. This is a pillar. And the women are the most involved in this because we are mothers and we're looking after our children. And we don't want our children to be left without anything like it has happened with other cultures. And us women are very together in this struggle. It's not just, this struggle is going to continue, and we're very firm. We're very firm to face the struggle.
And Mitch, it's been a long process. Can you explain a bit about the legal aspects? How can a community just arrive to the capital and demand their rights being respected and win in a case like this? I'm assuming there was a lot of resistance on the other side as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, as I mentioned before, the WAORANI in 2012 were in their villages, and the Ecuadorian government arrived by airplane without prior notice. Arrived basically to inform the WAORANI that they were going to sell their land out from under them to the oil industry. Most of the meeting happened in Spanish. Many of the elders don't speak Spanish and didn't fully understand what the government was talking about. Many people signed what they thought were sign-in sheets. And later they learned that the Ecuadorian government was using these hour-long meetings that were essentially impromptu and very confusing meetings to justify the sale of the WAORANI people's ancestral lands to the oil industry. And over the next 5 years, the WAORANI people organized with the help of Amazon Frontlines to build a territorial map to show the world that their land is not for sale, that their land is their life. And when the government in 2018 decided to once again announced that they were going to auction off the WAORANI people's lands, that's when the WAORANI came together. They convoked a series of urgent region-wide assemblies. With Amazon Frontline support, came to the decision to file a lawsuit against the Ecuadorian government, alleging that the government violated their rights to free, prior, and informed consent into territory, violated their rights to essentially decide what happens in their lands. And there was ample testimony from women, from elders, from the men who were there in the villages and were able to say that the government came in and they asked us to dance for the cameras. They asked us to sign a sheet. They spoke in technical jargon that we didn't understand. And it was through the collection of that testimony, that evidence, that we prepared with the WAORANI a lawsuit. And as Demonte was saying, the provincial court in Pastaza, through testimony and through the trial, realized that the Ecuadorian government, not only in the case of the WAORANI, but in the case of other indigenous nations, engaged essentially in a pattern of what amounts to deceitful practices in their consultation process, and didn't respect the importance of intercultural communications in the process as well.
And I imagine now that on the other side they're also saying, well, Ecuador depends heavily on oil. What happens if we can't produce oil? Do we just sit on barrels and barrels of oil underneath our soil?
Yeah, this is the indigenous people's ancestral territory, and it's their right to decide when and if extractive activities happen in their land. That's the first point, and that's recognized by international law, and it's recognized by the Ecuadorian Constitution. Secondly, there's been a series of very devastating reports that have come out from the UN around climate change and around biodiversity. Just last week, the UN announced that over 1 million plants and animals are at risk of extinction, and that humanity is essentially entering into or causing what could be the 6th extinction on planet Earth. and the Amazon is fundamental. 10% of the species on planet Earth are in the Amazon, 20% of our fresh water. The Amazon produces 20% of our oxygen. It's as fundamental for protecting our climate from climate chaos. And indigenous peoples like the Huaorani are the ancestral owners of 1.4 million square miles of primary rainforest. That's 10 times the size of California. And they have the right to decide when or if any extractive activities happen in their territory. And what the Huaorani are saying, and what many indigenous nations across the Amazon are saying, is no, our land is our life and we're going to defend it. And this lawsuit from the Huaorani is essentially setting a precedent right now to allow other indigenous nations to protect their lands, defend their rights, and protect the Amazon that we all depend on.
Then can we possibly be talking about a future when many of the communities, or maybe all the communities that are living in, unfortunately, soil that has underwater oil, underground oil, can they come together and say, well, we're not going to let any company come in, not even oil or gas or anything that comes near our territories? Can we possibly be looking at a future like that?
Yeah, the Huaorani right now are spearheading a process where they're setting a precedent for other indigenous nations to exercise their rights to protect their land. And what the Huaorani are also saying is, it's not, we don't only just want to say no to oil, we want to say yes to life, we want to say yes to our own proposals, ecotourism, solar energy, small businesses that are sustainable and that value our culture and our knowledge in the forest. And that's what they've been saying for the last years through the production of their territorial map, through a process where they're producing a vision over how they want to live in their lands in the 21st century. And what they're saying clearly is that we're not going to sell our territory. Oil is not part of our vision, and they're galvanizing other indigenous nations to support them and hopefully build a movement across the upper Amazon to protect indigenous territories from mining and from oil.
And also, maybe you are thinking about connecting with, for example, the rest of Ecuadorians that are not very aware of the situation inside the Amazon. How can you connect with them, or what do you want to tell them that they might not know?
Sí, pero yo veo que
I see that
gente, curen que decimos gente de ciudad,
people,
no
city
saben
people,
la vida
really
de
don't
selva,
know.
y también cuando
Don't know
nosotros salimos
what's going
acá en
on.
ciudad, no
And when we
sabemos,
come here,
totalmente perdemos,
it's the same thing. We don't know
desconectamos porque
how things
nosotros
go
no
here.
somos de vivir en el carro,
It's because
no somos de
we're not
mercado,
used to
como
having
fácilmente cogen
all these
comida,
shops
cosechado,
and using
comprar con dinero.
cars.
Nosotros vivimos en la selva
Because
otra manera. Nosotros
we live in
tenemos
another way.
conexión con la tierra,
We
conexión
have a
con la
direct connection
naturaleza,
with the
también
land,
conexión
with
con los
nature,
animales.
with
Sabemos,
animals.
nosotros no somos como aquí
We're not
apresuramos
like,
por hora. Nosotros
we don't have that
trabajamos,
time constraint like in the
pesca,
cities.
o hacer actividad cualquier momento,
We
cualquier hora.
do all these
Sentimos
activities,
muy
we do
libres,
our
muy
activities
libertad.
freely at
Aquí
any
es
time.
como
Here,
horario, desayuno,
everybody has a
mediodía y
schedule.
tarde,
They
y
have to
trabajar en la
be
oficina y
doing
venir y
breakfast,
descansar.
working,
Nuestra
coming
vivencia
and
en la
going.
Amazonía no es así.
In the Amazon, it's different.
No, es
We
muy
don't
libre.
live
Si
like
tú
that.
no quieres
It's very
comer, puedes
free.
estar en la hamaca,
If you don't want to do
haciendo,
anything,
cantando a su hijo, enseñando,
you
haciendo artesanía.
you can just do
Si
something
quieres
else.
caminar en el río,
If
puedes
you just want to
caminar.
walk
Si
in the
quieres
river,
cosechar,
go ahead.
cosecha. Si quieres
If you
sembrar,
want to grow
es otra
some
forma de
food,
vida
it's a
sana.
different food. It's a
Pero
different
yo
way
lo
of
que he
life.
sentido, yo
But what
conozco
I felt,
el mundo de afuera y mundo de la selva.
what I
Cuando yo
felt
estoy en la
is
ciudad,
that when I'm in the city,
estoy muy estresada,
I'm very
estoy
stressed.
desesperada, no tengo plata, cómo
I'm
ir,
anxious.
dónde
I don't
ir a
have
comer,
money.
cómo
Where do I
la
go?
vida
How do I pay
confunde.
things? I'm
No,
confused.
me hace pensar mucho más allá, no
And
es vida sana.
It's
para
not
mí.
a
La
healthy
vida sana
life.
es en la selva, porque
The
tú
healthy
conectas,
life is in
sientes
the
muy libre,
wilderness,
no
in the
preocupas,
forest.
comes comida muy sano,
We
alimento
eat
muy
very healthy
saludable
food.
también, no es químico, no es
It has no
contaminado, nada.
chemics.
Tú bebes agua pura,
We
también,
drink
respiras
pure
muy
water.
pura, y
We,
es como tu misma salud
we breathe
sientes
fresh air.
más sana también.
And that's why
Lo que
people
yo
are
veo en la
healthier.
selva más arriesgoso peligro es la única es culebra que puede
The only
picar
thing,
y
the
puedes
only
morir
risk that we
mortal, o
have in the
curas
forest
también.
is a
Hay otra
snake
cosa,
that
no,
might
hay
bite
otras
us.
enfermedades. Si tú estás aquí y estamos muriendo de
But
enfermedad
you're
de
here,
cualquier tipo,
everybody
porque
has
vivimos
any type of
contaminados, porque
illness, of
vivimos en otro
sickness.
mundo. Y eso nosotros queremos cuidar esa selva
And
que
we
es
want
muy
to
sana,
protect
y eso
our
aportamos lo que
our
yo
forest,
manifesté, el
which is
aire
very
que viene
healthy.
de la Amazonía, que
And
están
bear in
respirando,
mind that
y
the
eso es
air
muy
comes from
importante
the
que
Amazon
decir
basin.
al gobierno
It's the
que
lungs
escuche
of the
no
world.
destruir. Y ese es
Thank
mi
you very
palabra.
much, Nemonte, for your time, and Mitch as well.
Gracias.
So, we've been talking to Nemonte Nenkimo, a WAORANI leader, and Mitch Anderson from Amazon Frontlines. both here in Telesur. They are speaking on how communities in the Amazon are fighting to be able to live in peace and harmony with nature, as their ancestors have done for centuries. Thank you for watching. This is Interviews from Quito. I'm Carla Gonzalez. Until next time.